Welcome to leg 34 of the Great Loop Aboard the Perch. I'm Kim Russo with America's Great Loop Cruisers Association, and today we are doing some of the locks on the Erie Canal. So we're starting from Waterford, which is a flight of 5 locks, and all that means is it's almost like a set of stairs where it's 5 locks in pretty close succession to one another. This is our view as we waited for the Waterford lock, lock 2, to open. So it's lock 2 through 6 that make up the flight. The lock opens at 7 a.m. and this is looper boats lined up at 7. And unfortunately, there was an issue with the lock starting to operate on time. So we waited for probably a little bit more than a half an hour, and patience and persistence eventually paid off. We saw the lock doors start to open. The way these locks work is you communicate with the lockmaster to be able to lock through. You wait for the green light, which it looks just like a traffic signal. And when the green light comes on, you are cleared to enter the lock. So we and I believe 4 other looper boats entered the lock. Each lock has one of a few different methods of tying up, so to speak. So some have cables, some have pipes, and those both work pretty similarly. And some have weighted lines that you hold on to. So we'll go into more detail about that as we proceed through the locks. But you can see the green light there on the wall. And we headed on into lock 2 to begin the Waterford Flight. I didn't take a whole lot of video in the initial locks. It's a process you really have to become accustomed to, and I'm still working on that. So shortly after we entered the lock, I did put the video down and focus just strictly on getting the lines set up so that we could lock through safely. You never want to tie off the lines to a cleat. That could put you in risk of the line getting caught, and once there's enough tension on the line, it's just about impossible to get that tension off. You would have to cut it with a knife at that point, but that's kind of the view as we're all moving into the lock. And that is some looper boats inside the lock. You can see the sill there and the big gates that will open once the water has filled and the lock is ready for us to lock through. So there we are coming out the top of the lock. You can see we just did another stop, so that was the second lock, which is lock 3 actually. That's lock 4, onward to lock 5, and then onward to lock 6. So that is the end of the Waterford Flight. You can see on the timeline there it was about 9:30, so with the delay it took us about 2 hours to get through the Waterford Flight. But in between the locks you are basically cruising on the Mohawk River. Beautiful scenery, ruralness out there throughout. And then we shortly thereafter approached lock 7. We could see the water coming out from under the gates, so that's a good indication that the lock's not quite ready for you yet. But when the green light came on after communicating with the lockmaster, we went into the lock, locked through, and continued on. All of these locks at this portion of the Erie Canal we're currently locking up. So we come in at the bottom of the lock, we get all set up, tied off, the lock fills with water and floats us up to the top, and then the gates open, and we have increased our elevation and we can continue on the Erie Canal. So that was lock 8. Here is the entrance to lock 9. And you can see the spillway there to the side of lock 9. And this is just kind of what a day of locking through is like. Lots of stops. You're covering less mileages because each lock probably takes anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes. We really did not have to wait very much for the locks, but occasionally you will have to wait, so you just need to be prepared for that. Most of the boats we were cruising with were tying up at Riverlink Park in Amsterdam. We decided to press on past there, go ahead and lock through lock 11, and just on the other side of lock 11 there is a free wall that even has 3 power pedestals. So in total there were 3 looper boats on the free wall in Amsterdam that evening, and a short walk to an Italian restaurant that happened to be called Russo's, and we were treated to this beautiful sunset from the boats before we turned in for the night. Here is our Nebo log for the day. You can see Nebo recorded 12 separate voyages, and that was due to all the starting and stopping, waiting for locks, and actually locking through. In total, we were underway for between 5 and 6 hours. We traveled a distance of 33.6 nautical miles, averaged a speed of 6 knots, and our maximum speed was 10 knots, and that was certainly during one of the Mohawk River portions of today's trip. So here again is the overall view of the track for the day, going from east to west through this portion of the Erie Canal. Our next stop will take us from this free wall in Amsterdam on over to Little Falls, which is another really economical place to tie up. So we'll tell you more about that in the next video. Look for that coming out soon. Thanks for watching.